Hi, this is Cristina Dam, and this is Liberate the Podcast, where we educate, motivate, inspire, and liberate your consciousness. From spirituality, holistic healing, to creativity and conscious business, we've got your mind, body, and spirit covered. Hi there, welcome to another episode of Liberate the Podcast. Today, we are going to have an intimate talk with Diana Osberg, who has been doing this facilitation work for over a decade. She's a yoga facilitator. She's a sound bath instructor. She facilitates her own inner healing retreats. And, you know, we're going to look at the topic of letting go of what doesn't serve you. And I think that that's a big thing for a lot of people is how do we release so that we can move forward? We got to clear out that clutter in order to create space. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to just share a little bit about yourself?
Wow, that's a hard question to answer.
I make it vague on purpose because I like to hear what pieces and things that people choose to say on their own. So.
Well, I'll just say that I'm healing along with everybody else, that I'm in the process of awakening with everybody else. And I've come to a point where I love what I'm doing. I love sharing these ancient technologies, the sound healing, sound therapy. There are different terms you can apply to it. It has been around for over 5,000 years in various forms, and it's wonderful that the Western world is rediscovering or discovering for the first time that these technologies are so deeply healing on so many different levels. And I'm enjoying experimenting, and I take classes with other people, and I learn and I incorporate these things into my own personal practice, and then I share them with you.
Awesome. But what got you into it?
That's a great question. Of course, I had started practicing yoga quite a number of years ago, and that's where it went for a while. And then I went to a sound bath. I saw it on a yoga schedule.
Yeah, a lot of yoga studios do sound baths.
What is that? And I have a background in music. I was a singer and pianist, and so sound has always fascinated me. And we all know how comforting music can be. So I went to the sound bath, and she had both gongs and crystal singing bowls. Okay. And the first time I ever heard a crystal singing bowl, I thought, oh my God, I want one. So it took me a few years, actually, to finally buy one.
They're super expensive too. It's an investment, especially like the really nice ones that are infused with real crystal.
Yes, definitely.
You can get some of the ones that are just made of glass that are a little bit more reasonable, but the ones
they
that
don't work. The glass ones don't really work. But so anyway, I bought one. My first one was a heart chakra bowl. And then I kept buying them. And I bought the crystal singing bowls. I bought all of the bowls for the chakras. Then I started buying Tibetan singing bowls, which are different. They're metal. They're an amalgam of 7 metals. Mm-hmm. And that they have a different feel to them.
And you can
put them, different vibration. You can put them on your body, actually, which is really interesting. I actually do that for myself, too. And then I started buying gongs. And I've just had so much fun experimenting with them. And at that time, I actually had a really stressful corporate job. And there was one lady I was working with who was teaching, just giving a free yoga class after work for our co-workers. So I asked her if I could come by with some bowls and do a sound bath after her class, and I did, and they invited me back, and then that opened up an opportunity with a local yoga studio to do a monthly Reiki circle sound bath. I started working with some Reiki masters, and it has just blossomed from there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So it was one little, experience to the bowls, to the different types of bowls, to the gongs, and incorporating all of it. And, what were some of the things that you were experiencing and going through when you were having this? 'Cause you're saying that you're doing your own healing and transformational work. And, what continued to pull you when the things that you noticed as the effectiveness?
Well, first of all, I'm one of those people, I've always been one of those people that if I jumped in the river, I'd be swimming up against the current, fighting it every step of the way. And I'm learning how to go with the current to get to shore. And it's a powerful metaphor really about letting go, to go with it. And I began to realize that as I experimented with this, I call it a technology, you can call it what you want, that opportunities were opening up for me without my pushing, without my having to swim against the tide. And I'll tell you a funny story. It's funny now. At the time, it was kind of embarrassing and scary.
And that's how hindsight works, right?
Yeah, well, this is one of those defining moments in my awakening, beginning, you heal over a certain period of time, but there's usually a point where something significant happens that really gets your attention, and that's when you start to become more active in your evolution. Because that's what healing is. It's an evolution of your soul. So at the time, again, I was still working in that really stressful corporate job. And we live here in Los Angeles, and everybody knows, whether you live here or not, you know how bad the traffic is on the freeways and how frustrating it can be. And I'm very punctual. I didn't want to be late for work one morning when I was heading off to work. And so I drove out of the parking lot and headed toward the exit from the apartment complex. And lo and behold, what should be blocking the exit but this big old garbage truck? And I started beeping the horn. I was getting angrier and angrier and frustrated and scared I was going to be late to work. I always felt like I had an axe over my head, and he would not move. He was just doing his job. So I finally, and I'm so embarrassed to say this, but I finally got out of my car, came over to his truck, and I punched the door.
Oh my God.
And I was screaming at this guy. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, what are you doing, woman? But I did it. And he moved. And I got past him and I got off to work, and all day long I thought, I am scared he's going to call the cops, and I'm going to come home and there's going to be like the deputy there waiting to arrest me. And I got home and there was no deputy, there were no police. But I thought, I'm going to have a heart attack or a stroke if I don't change my life.
Yeah,
I need to learn how to let this go.
Yeah.
This furious anger that I knew had been there. And every once in a while, something would push that button and make it come out. So that's when I started meditating. And almost immediately, it changed me. And I know a lot of people say, well, I just don't have the patience to just sit there and meditate. And I understand that. I'm a person who never stops moving. You probably can see me fidgeting a lot here. That's me. It's a lot of energy coming through me all the time. But there are so many different ways that you can meditate. You can sit quietly and open up space and breathe and just allow that monkey mind to settle down and let it go. But that's not so easy for most people.
Yeah.
So there are various active ways that you can meditate without having to sit. And I mix it up. I don't do the same thing all the time. There are days when I just can't sit still like that. So I also, in addition to doing sound baths and giving sound therapy to individuals as well as groups, I will lead conscious breathing sessions. It's sometimes called yogic breathing, conscious breathing. And that's very grounding, and it allows your mind to settle and keeps it from whirling, that monkey mind chatter. There are different words for it, but and that's a form of letting go. And I will say about letting go, it's kind of a dichotomy. I say letting go is the simplest, easiest thing to do in the whole wide world, and yet it's the hardest thing that you can do. And I think of those words as being a very active thing. Letting go, it feels like you have to do something to let go, which kind of is counterproductive, I think. So a lot of times I'd like to just call it allowing.
Okay.
I allow these things. So instead of trying to control everything in your life, you allow it to happen. So with the breathing, the conscious breathing, you do have a certain amount of control.
Okay.
So if you have difficulty just sitting quietly and meditating, you can do a breathing meditation.
So it gives you something to focus on.
Exactly. And you can also walk in nature. That's one of the best things. I will get what I call downloads from time to time. I can't control them, but I will suddenly be filled with really profound information that is coming from my ancient wisdom, my deep true self, I think. And that's one of the things you can do when you can let go and really connect with your true self, is that you'll start bringing up this wisdom, whether it comes from deep inside or it comes from your higher self, from angels or other beings, or from your God self. It doesn't matter. And then that kind of brings me around to the sound healing, the sound therapy, is that these vibrations from the instruments are so powerful. And because we are not solid beings, we are vibratory beings. We're energy that's vibrating all the time. And in order for us to maintain a healthy self, body, heart, mind, and spirit, because you can't separate them, it's all one.
Yeah.
Body, heart, mind, spirit, these different parts of us vibrate at different frequencies naturally. And because when we are traumatized, whether we're injured physically, injured emotionally, if we have chemical exposure, anything that would be detrimental to ourselves, body, heart, mind, and spirit, it's not just the body, will change the frequencies. So these instruments can, and again I'll say can because you have to be open to this technology. If you're closed off about it, if you're closed-minded, at best you may just sleep really well after a sound bath. But if you can be open to it, it's amazing what can happen. And it will, the frequencies will realign your frequencies and return them, restore them back to the natural frequencies that we're meant to have to maintain health. Another thing that happens from the trauma is that the energy gets stuck in us. And so the different modalities like Reiki, the sound will move that energy out, and you'll start to feel more energized because of it, because that energy is now available to you to access.
Yeah, it's no longer stuck or stagnant or not being absorption. So is this one of the processes that you help people to let go?
Yes.
Because, I mean, letting go is easier said than done, right?
Yes,
you know, like
is.
how you were saying, it's one of the easiest things to do, but one of the most difficult things to do. And so you have these different, technologies or approaches and practices that can help facilitate somebody into the process of being able to release.
And that's why I think it's important to try different modalities, because each person is different. Each person has their own set of issues, because each one of us has our own unique path that we can choose. Because of free will, we can choose to follow that path that was given to us when we were born. And one of the other modalities that I work with a lot that I absolutely adore is Yin Yoga. And a lot of people are not familiar with that. I don't teach a weekly class. What I like to do is I incorporate the asanas into the poses, into different workshops that I'm doing. So we might start out with some breath work. We'll do some Yin Yoga to open up space and to ground us. One of the things I love about Yin is, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's a style of yoga that's mostly done on the floor, and the poses or asanas are held for long periods of time, a minimum of 3 minutes, up to 5 or more minutes. And there's a meditative aspect to it, so that you move into your edge of discomfort, not pain, but discomfort, much like life, because life can be quite uncomfortable. So you move into that discomfort and you learn to let that go and accept what is. Because when you cannot do anything about, if you can do something about it, do it. Don't sit there and moan about it and complain about how much you hate this, because you can change it. But if you can't do anything about it, what makes life painful is you're holding on to that. You hold on to pain, you hold on to anger. I kind of think about pain as being a shield and anger being the sword. So you're constantly defending yourself when you don't need to. So if you can allow things to happen, so within the yin, you move to that edge of discomfort and allow, rest with what is. And what's interesting about yin physically is that a lot of people describe it as deep stretching, but it really isn't. It's not. You're not trying to stretch your muscles. You are lengthening and lubricating the fascia and the connective tissue that's under and around the muscles and in your joints.
Gotcha.
And that's where we hold trauma. That's where a lot of the energy gets stuck, particularly in hips. I don't know if you practice yoga, but usually if the yoga instructor says, "Oh, we're going to do a hip set today," everybody groans because it hurts. But it's interesting because we hold so much of our pain in our hips, so much of the trauma in our hips. And so I'll get people crying, not because they're hurt, not because they're feeling pain, because they're releasing. And this happens, interestingly, with the sound baths, too. There was one woman in particular, she cried through the whole sound bath, cried, because it's a release. And she sent me a note afterwards that evening. She said, "Wow, Diana," she said, "I didn't realize how much," she said, because I understand from this session the layers that need to be released that I didn't know were there. And she said, I was releasing things that I didn't realize needed to be released. She said, now I know I need to do this more often. And I would encourage that if you can do it. You can even buy yourself a bowl and do it at home. It's not quite the same.
It's kind of like, you're not getting the same let go and just experience.
Yeah, because you're participating in it. For me as a practitioner, I do get certain benefits from it, but the interesting thing about this technology is that it changes your brain waves. It usually, in our waking hours, we are in beta state. So we're fighting to survive, in the beta state. And then when you're more relaxed, when you allow your parasympathetic nervous system to activate, which again, these technologies like the Yin Yoga, like the breathing, they settle down the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, and it puts cortisone and adrenaline into your system, and that's what, it's not good for your heart, it's not good for your weight, it's not good at all. So these technologies change your brain waves. Usually it'll settle you down into alpha, and then you'll go into a theta state. And that fight or flight will settle down. And they call it, this parasympathetic nervous system is often referred to as the rest and digest. And the theta state is like, that how you feel when you're just drifting off to sleep, and you're still aware of stuff that's in the room, but you feel like your body really can't move, and you're starting to dream. You might drool.
Putting me in that right now, hypnotizing me.
But anyway, that's the theta brainwave, and that's what happens with the crystal singing bowls, the Tibetan singing bowls, the gongs. The gongs are really powerful, amazing instruments.
And what do you find that the differences that they do? Because you incorporate all of these different sound instruments and vibrations. And so what do you think that the singing bowls, or in your experience, working with the energies that in that technology, that you think that the crystal bowls do that are different than the Tibetan bowls that are different than the gongs? Because they all operate a little bit differently.
Yeah, first of all, when I select what I'm going to use, if I'm doing a gong bath, I don't have so much of a selection. But when I'm doing a sound bath with mostly bowls, I intuitively feel what people need. And these are tough times right now, and we're all going through a huge shift together. So I can feel it in me, and I feel like if I know I need it, everybody else does too, because we're all connected. We really are. The crystal singing bowls are tremendously powerful. They're made of 99% quartz crystal, and our bodies are crystalline structures, and we also contain a lot of water. So the sound waves very easily go through our bodies, through the water that's in our bodies. The interesting thing about the crystal singing bowls is that they also penetrate bone. They're that powerful.
Wow.
Now, they say this is a bit of a marketing ploy. It may be, but I still think it's fun to think about, and I think there's validity to it, is that usually the bowls are labeled by the chakra system, the energy system, going from your root chakra all the way up to the crown. So I oftentimes will theme a session depending on what I think people need. Over the winter, I felt like people were really anxious and angry and scared, and they needed to be grounded, so I was staying down in the root chakra, sacral area, a little bit of solar plexus, and then I bring in some other things to complement the bowls. And there's one that people really love, that I love doing too, is that when you get two bowls that are about a half a tone off from each other, they play with each other. These bowls love each other, playing with each other, and they'll create, even though there are just two tones between two bowls, there's another tone that will come in, and when they're only half a step off from each other, they set up this thing called binaural beats. And I call it ear floss, because you can feel it going back and forth in and out of your ears. It's really cool. And I have people tell me this all the time. They said, I swear you were standing right over me playing those bowls. And I wasn't. I was probably 10 feet away. And so and I can feel it kind of loosening things up and moving the energy out. So sometimes I'll bring in the Tibetan singing bowls. It depends. When I first started doing them, doing sound baths, I played the Tibetan bowls more. But they are less powerful. I don't like to use that word. They have a different effect than the crystal singing bowls, and I like to use the Tibetan singing bowls on people's bodies directly. That has a different kind of effect, a more direct effect, and I'll apply them depending on what the client needs.
Got you.
Yeah, and they can be applied on the front or on the back. I also have tuning forks. I just bought a crystal tuning fork, which is really interesting, and it's in the 528 hertz range, which is the frequency of love. And I have a workshop I'm going to be doing in July that's called The Sound of Love, and it's all about opening up the heart chakra and raising the frequency to the frequency of love, 528 hertz. And so we're going to play around with some tuning forks and
beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and there are things that you can do. I incorporate the Yin Yoga into it because there are things that you can do to open up the heart chakra, to open up the physical space, and then open up the or retune the vibrations.
Yeah. And so what about the gongs? What do they do for the body?
Wow. I've been playing gongs for a bit, not as long as with the bowls, and the more I play them, the more fascinated I am by them. I did a gong bath here at Liberate Hollywood on Sunday, and I had so much fun. I had a new gong that I hadn't played with the other one. I had a little tam-tam for accent, but I had two main gongs, and they fell in love with each other. I had not played them again together, and they set up that binaural beats, which I totally was not expecting, because I've been to gong baths and I've never heard binaural beats with gongs. These two set up the binaural beats, and I started playing one, and then I started playing the other one, and it was this so I stopped and just allowed it to happen. Actually, I hadn't thought about that, but as a practitioner, there are things you have to allow. You have to allow space not to be active all the time, bang, 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 and it's interesting too, because again, as a practitioner, you bring your own energy into those instruments, through the instruments to the other souls who are in the room. Yeah. And so you have to be really careful about what energy you bring in with you. If you've had a bad day, or you ran into just terrible traffic on your way into
punch the garbage truck,
Yeah, exactly. No more of that. So you really have to allow that to go. Mm-hmm. And I'm really getting much better at it. I'm human, mm-hmm. and I'm going through my own process, and that's what it is. It's a process, and it's uncovering layers, and different people need different things. There was one, I did an all crystal sound bath here. I've done it a couple of times here. It was interesting. The first one that I did here, it was a big group. We were full, and I had a couple of people who let me know afterwards that they connected with loved ones during the session. One of them was a grandmother who was gravely ill in the hospital. She was still alive, but she communicated with her granddaughter who was here at the session, during the session. And then the other one was a loved one who had already passed over, who contacted her during the session. It's really incredible what happens. I had another session I did with a group, and a woman came up to me afterwards, and she's being treated for cancer. I think it might be liver cancer. Okay. She said she could feel it working. She could feel the vibrations in that area, and that it felt so healing and comforting. And the technology can relieve pain. Yeah. It can relieve physical pain. It can relieve emotional pain. So again,
And energize people and all those other things.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking right now, I know another thing that wanting to touch on is this element of angels.
Yeah.
Because, whether sometimes people look at loved ones as angelic beings that are watching over them. Sometimes, it's a different vibration of these angels. And so I just wanted to, I know that was one of the things that you wanted to tap into. So.
Yeah, I have an interesting story.
Okay.
I've always known, I've never been a religious person, but I've always known I've had angels around me. And as it turns out, everyone does. Mm-hmm. Some of us are aware and some of us aren't. As a couple of years ago, I was, along with a business partner and I, we put together a retreat in Sedona, at the Sedona Mago Center. I don't know if you've been there.
No, but I love Sedona.
It's really, it's a beautiful place, and it has the vortexes. And it was my first experience going there, and I brought a whole bunch of crystal singing bowls because I was doing a sound bath for the group. So I drove there. It's an 8-hour drive. And this very bumpy, long access road up to the retreat center. And I had to go about 5 miles an hour. I didn't want to break the bowls. Anyway, long story short, all
8-hour drive turned into 12 hours.
Yeah, pretty much. And so we were there 5 days, and I was one of the retreat leaders, and I was so hoping that I would have some sort of really incredible experience with the vortexes, and nothing. And all week there was a little bit of a pulsing in one of my ears, and I thought, well, is that it? And then it was time to go home, said goodbye to people, and packed everything up. And I was driving out that very long, bumpy access road when suddenly, and this happened so quickly, I saw a swirl of layer upon layer of white angels flying around the outside of my car. And then they were gone, and I stopped the car, and I took a breath. And as I mentioned before, I get these downloads occasionally, and the download was, and it's like nobody talks to me or anything, it's there. Mm-hmm. And I was told that I need to bring my angels to people who need them. Mm. And I get very emotional about this. So I see bringing the sound healing to people and the other modalities to people as my path to helping people awaken and know that there isn't anything wrong. Everything's okay. Yeah. Everything's okay. Even in this crazy world that we have right now, everything's okay. Focus on the good. Focus, let that pain go. I know it's easier said than done, but just allow it to go. One trick that you can do, actually I've got a couple of tricks. Yeah. One is you can just acknowledge that it's there. Yeah. And don't dwell on it. It's like, I know you're there. One day if I'm feeling really depressed, I think, oh, I'm feeling depressed today. I acknowledge that I'm feeling depressed. There's nothing wrong. Things always change, so I know that I won't always feel this way. Mm. Another thing that I do, and I often say this as right at the very beginning of a sound bath, I will talk about during the sound bath and even afterwards, certain thoughts and emotions will come up. Yeah. And so I ask people, just notice that those thoughts and emotions are there, but don't judge them and let them go on their way. And then if you want to make it a visual thing, which people find helpful, and you can do this if you're just sitting meditating too, thoughts and emotions come up, put them on a leaf, on a gentle stream. So the thoughts and emotions, your worries, are on that leaf, and they float down the stream, and they float into your view. So you notice that leaf, but you don't judge that leaf. And it just keeps floating out of your sight and out of your consciousness.
I like that.
And it's gone. And these things will keep coming up. Another trick you can do is just focus on your breathing. put your attention on your breath. Mm-hmm. So when your mind starts wandering, you start thinking, oh, I didn't like that girl. She took my parking space. Or something.
Yeah, I mean,
those things happen. Or
I
just, for some reason, this girl at work bugs me, you know. So you can put your focus on your breath and breathe in and breathe out. You can breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 6.
Yeah. And
just count. Another thing that is really great is Ujjayi breath. This is a little bit off topic, but you know, if you have trouble sleeping, one thing that you can do is a little Ujjayi breath before you go to sleep. Just lay down, and the Ujjayi is it's a restricted breath, so it sounds almost like you're snoring, but it's generated more from the chest, so it's. And so you can lay there and breathe in through your nose for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and then breathe out using Ujjayi for a count of 6, and then hold it for a count of 2. And then again, and you do this 8 times, and I can almost guarantee you'll be asleep before you finish your round.
Okay, so say it one more time. Breathe into the count.
Breathe in through your nose with the restricted breath for a count of 4. Hold it for a count of 4. Breathe out with the restricted breath for a count of 6, and hold it for a count of 2. So it's in for 4, hold for 4, out for 6, and hold for 2.
And then keep on going.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. So, you know, where can everybody find you? I know that you do a whole bunch of different retreats. You have some retreats coming up, but you know, depending on when people listen or watch this podcast, you know.
I've always got stuff going on. I have so much fun putting together retreats and workshops and sound baths. And so you can find me, the name of my company that I do these under is called Inner Story Retreats. Mm-hmm. And and I think you're going to put the URL on the page, but it's innerstoryretreats.com. And we've got a couple of really exciting things coming up. I'm going to be doing more at Liberate Hollywood. And by the way, if you've never been to Liberate Hollywood, please come visit. You know, if you don't live in the area and you just happen to come to Southern California, come to visit. It's an amazing store.
Yeah, and come and take a sound bath.
Come take a sound bath.
And you know, we'll be doing a lot of retreats elsewhere too. That's some of our things on our agenda for by the end of the year and next year.
And I'll be doing more here, and then I have a couple of that are outside. There's one I'm doing on a rooftop on summer solstice, and I'm calling it Moonlight Yin Rooftop Sound Bath. And it's actually just a couple of miles from here, and it has a view of the Hollywood sign in the downtown, and it's right on top of the roof. So, and that one's filling up. So that one's going to sell out.
Summer solstice, rooftop, view of Hollywood sign,
moonlight, and moonlight is a yin thing. And then the other one is August 17th. I'm doing I'm calling it a mini retreat. It's a morning retreat at the Japanese Garden in Van Nuys.
Oh, beautiful.
And you know, I hadn't been there, and I've lived in the valley for years, and I finally went to visit. It's 6.5 acres, and it's just gorgeous. I have reserved the entire thing for our exclusive use. And
beautiful.
There's a traditional Japanese Shoin building at the far end of the lake where we'll be doing the program. You'll have time to just, meditate and walk and, enjoy the garden, but then we'll be in the Shoin building. When I walked in there, I thought, oh my God, this is the perfect place for sound bath and yoga. So we'll be doing some breathing. We'll be doing a little yin yoga. If you've never done yoga before, don't worry about it. Anybody can do this. It's easy. And then a nice long sound bath right by the lake, and it's just beautiful.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I can't wait.
So lots of amazing things, lots of interesting retreats, evenings, experiences that you do. If you had to leave somebody with something, what would you say with everybody? What would be the last word of wisdom?
Let it go.
Let it go.
Let it go. Isn't that a Disney song?
I was just going to say. I was like, that's Frozen all over again. It was reminded me when my niece and nephew were visiting, and my niece rode with me, and I had a little convertible, and we were driving down Palm Springs the whole time from Los Angeles there. The song over and over and over again. I was like, oh my God, this drive cannot be done soon enough. Let it go. One more time. Oh my God, let it go. I'm sure there's a lot of parents that feel that.
For that length of time, maybe.
I need to let that go.
Wow. Yes, that's true. Music worms.
But thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for having me.
This is fun. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Until next time, have a beautiful evening or day, whatever it is for you.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this conversation, like it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. If you want some more amazing resources on your path of liberation, head over to liberateyourself.com and sign up for our mailing list. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram at Liberate Hollywood, all one word, or Liberate Emporium, all one word. Until next time, liberate yourself.